All right, thank you for attending today, everyone, to step into your next leadership role with confidence. We're so excited for you to be here and take this next hour for you to learn a lot of new things. I was going to say something new, but I guarantee you will learn more than one thing today. And why we're so excited about this topic is that we're looking at all these different stats, and Nicole and I work with clients all the time who are struggling with this topic about leadership. And you could go to the next slide, Nicole. One big thing that's standing out to us is that businesses say that this is a really important topic. They're trying to develop leaders. And this recent study showed that 83% of businesses say this is important to be developing leaders at all levels. But on the other side, what we hear is that less than 5% of companies have actually implemented some sort of leadership development across all levels. So we're really here hoping to bridge some of these gaps within your own organization, or if you're making some transitions into your next organization. So again, we have a lot of really great topics and tips for you today. So we're going to quickly be moving forward. And next slide. Yes. So who are we and why do we love talking about leadership roles? First off, I'm Brittany Canaski. For those of you who don't know me, I have my own business, Hello Velocity. I'm a leadership coach and trainer, and I help both leaders and their teams to work more efficiently together. One of my favorite little tidbits is I always say that I'm passionate about working smarter, not harder, and helping other people do that as well. And I have a corporate America background. I used to work in marketing and have been coaching people now for the last 5 years. All right, Nicole, let you take it away.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you, Brittany. I'm so excited to be co-hosting this webinar with you and to have everyone in the chat. My name is Nicole Anderson, and I run a small business called Career Coach Nicole, where I do exactly what it sounds like. I career coach people to help them transform their careers. And I really love to do this because I have a background in corporate recruiting. I've hired for so many different types of teams, types of roles. I've interviewed probably 10 billion people. And I love to take all these things that I know about how businesses build teams and hire talent, and then use that to help people access equitable opportunity. I think that careers shouldn't be limited by your identity, by your background, by even what you majored in college. I think that you should have equitable access to opportunity and really be able to have tools and resources. And I love to help my clients work on that. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're going to talk about today and what the lay of the land looks like. And as we move through things, please share in the chat any thoughts you questions you have as they come up. If we're talking about something and you're like, I want to know more about that, put it in the chat. Both Brittany and I are going to share all the great things that we've prepared for you. And then at the end, we're going to go through our chat and answer some of those questions. So feel free to share anything you would like. And if you stick around until the end, we have an awesome resource that's going to take away some actionable tips for you so that you can walk away with some things to apply in your own leadership journey. And we're going to show you that link at the end so that you can grab that free resource for you. And I'm going to kick us off with talking through some of our topics, and then Brittany is going to pick up after that. I'm going to kick us off with talking through asking for a promotion into a leadership position. What does that look like to have that conversation? I'm going to talk about applying and interviewing for a leadership role. Again, that's something that I have a lot of experience on, of the other side of conducting and facilitating those interviews. So I love to share some of my tips from that side of corporate America. And then Brittany's going to pick up and tell you what this is going to look like for you as a leader in your new role, setting clear expectations in your first 90 days and growing your confidence as a leader. So by the end of this hour, you're going to know how to set up that new leadership role and go into it with confidence, and really just a 1 hour power course in being the best version of your own style of leadership. And with that, in thinking about your own style of leadership, I have a question that I would love for everyone to ponder. Think through, what are some of the qualities of the best leaders that you've had in your life. It could be maybe a softball coach from when you were in high school. It could be a manager you had in a past role, maybe a mentor that you've had in your career journey. What are some of those things that, those qualities that you've seen and you'd admired and said, hey, you know what, if I'm ever a manager, like, I want to do that for someone. And it could be big, it could be small. Take a moment. I'd love to see in the chat anything that comes to mind for you. And as you think through that and prepare it for the chat, I'll share something that I have really enjoyed from a past leader to kick off. For me, I love having managers who are really flexible with my schedule. I'm a creative and I don't work in a linear fashion. And having a manager who supports that has been, for me, like the best kind of working relationship that I've had in my own career. So in the chat, Lauren L says championed your career path. Absolutely. Someone who is like, I'm here with you on this path. I want to see you achieve your goals. I love that, Lauren. Rachel says recognition that we are actually humans and caring about me beyond work and productivity. I totally agree, Rachel, 1000%. Corey says authentic, trustworthy, and good listeners, 1000%. Rachel says, encouraging me to pursue work that was energizing to me. Again, that career path development, someone being invested in these goals with you. I love it. Doer, visionary, integrity, collaboration, humanist. I'm obsessed. That's amazing. I'm seeing this theme of like authenticity and people and relations and motivating through your passion and strengths from Darren. I love that. Compassionate and effective, 1000%. I love it. These are amazing qualities. These are amazing adjectives. These are amazing qualities to have. And I really love to start off with this as something to think through our whole conversation, because really thinking through the leaders that you've had in the past is the best way to kick off into the kind of leader that you want to be. And that's whether you're an established leader, maybe you've led a lot of teams in the past and you feel like you know the leadership ropes pretty well, or maybe you're really new on your leadership path. And wherever you are, coming back to the central quality of what kind of leader have I learned from the best? What really did I admire? What did I respect? And those are qualities you want to take with you as we talk about how to do things like, click, click, asking for a promotion. So asking for promotion, that's something that's encouraged so much in corporate America. And, you know, it's encouraged that that should be part of your career pathway. But let's think about like the reasons that are true for you and why you might do that. And the first thing that you want to do on this journey of getting clarity in your career journey is understand what it means to be a leader. Really get to that why, get to those things that really motivate you. If you're someone who's been motivated by a manager who's with you on your career journey, how can you be that for other people? And why do you enjoy leading other people? And really digging into understanding what it means to be a leader. There's a lot of amazing things that happen in a leadership context. And today we're going to really dig into what this can look like as well in a day-to-day basis and how to be a successful version of that. And as we're getting clarity on this career pathway for you, a few things to think through as how to know you might be ready for a leadership role. If you enjoy guiding people, if you enjoy holding a vision and executing it with other people, if you are responsible for a lot of things on your team that maybe other people on your team aren't responsible for, maybe you're part of strategic planning or planning a budget, or you're doing things that are starting to look more and more leadership level, like those can be signs that you're ready for a leadership role or even that next step in your leadership journey. And another thing that shows to know that you might be ready for a leadership role is that you're comfortable enough with holding boundaries in the workplace, because being a manager means that you are having a lot of conversations about expectations and delivery of work. And so this is maybe a skill that you're becoming more comfortable with in your own professional skill set. And then again, as you get clarity, think about what kind of leader you want to be. And digging into specifically asking for a promotion, I think one thing I want to level set on is when we talk about promotions, there are really two ways to pursue a promotion. There is an internal pathway, which is asking for a promotion at a company where you're already working. And then there is external, looking outside of the company where you might be currently working. And that looks like applying to new jobs. And each of these have really different ways that you'll approach this process. So I wanted to define that right up top. And perfect. Let's start off with how to ask for steps that you should, how to ask for that promotion internally at a company where you're already working. I think the best thing that you can do as you prepare yourself for this conversation is really know that your company supports internal movement. Your company knows that you are an employee, which means you're a human, and humans really, really are motivated by growth. And they know that if they are not able to provide you that career growth that is necessary for you in a reasonable amount of time, you'll leave the company. So it's as much in the company's best interest for you to ask for promotion and have access to opportunity as it is in your best interest to grow in the way that feels right for you in your career at a company. So beginning with that mindset is an amazing place to start. And then decide what your next move might look like. Maybe it looks like you want to manage a larger team. Maybe you want to work with a new tool or skill set. Maybe you're working internally at a company and you see that there's a new initiative happening over here. And you think, I want to work on the new cusp of what's happening in this company. Get clear on that, because the next piece, which is exploring those opportunities, building those relationships, that piece is going to happen so much more naturally if you can be in conversation with people and define what the next step looks like for you in your career. And finally, this can't be understated. Engaging your manager is the most important thing that you can do when asking for a promotion, of course, because you have to ask them for the promotion, right? And your entire relationship with your manager is your key to internal growth at your current company. And that can feel really daunting. I think we've all had really different kinds of relationships with our managers. We've had some managers where that's an easy conversation, some where it might be tougher, or maybe you're not sure how to approach this at all. So with that, I have created a script that you can use to get started. Here are some talking points for the kind of conversation that you can have with your manager. I won't read through this in depth. I'll give you a moment to skim through it. But something that I wanted to tell you is that this is one of the resources that Brittany and I have prepared for you in our free resource at the end. And I have several other scripts that I've written for you so that if you're navigating asking for promotion from several different angles, I've got some good tools in there for you, and we're excited for you to download that later on. And if you're looking externally for a role, if you're thinking about not just asking for a promotion, but maybe is my career trajectory with my current company, what does this look like for me over time? Then that means looking externally and really job searching, looking around at other companies where you might want to work. And this might be a good idea for you if you have been at a company and you've had the conversation with your manager. You've said to your manager, hey, I'm ready. You've had that script, you've laid it out. I'm ready for that next leadership role. I'm ready to get to the next place in my career. And they're there with you. And they say, I want to provide that. Let's do it. But maybe it's been 6 months, maybe it's been a year, maybe it's been a year and a half, and you're just not really seeing that happening. That's a good sign it's time to look externally. One thing I'll tell you, a quick tip as an HR professional, is that a lot of companies right now, because of the economic climate and the job market and all these buzzwords, a lot of companies don't have the budget they used to for promotions. So just keep that in mind and know that if you're going through something where you've expressed interest in promotions and it's taking longer than you think it should, just keep in mind that that may be a larger scope than just your company being maybe being a roadblock for you. It's you're not the only person going through this, so just want to throw that out there. It might be time for you to look externally at another company if you know the kind of leader you want to be, but where you're working doesn't reflect that. Maybe you look around at other managers and you're thinking at the place where you work and you're thinking, I don't want any of their jobs. That's a good sign that you might want to explore other things. And finally, you don't feel supported by your current leadership team. There's a lot of reasons that could happen, but that is a really big indicator that maybe it's time to move into another organization. And as a disclaimer, you can do a bit of this at the same time. You can look for an internal role while you're looking externally. You don't really have to choose one pathway or another, but we wanted to provide you with resources so that you can go down either one of these two pathways. All right, so now you're in the position where you've asked for the promotion. You've thought about what this looks like for you. You are ready to get started. So we're going to prepare you for applying for this new role and engaging in an interview process. And when you're applying for a leadership role, like I mentioned, if it's internal, what you're going to want to do is talk with your manager. And that is the first thing I would do before I hit any internal buttons on any internal career pages, because your manager is probably going to get an automated notification if you apply for any roles inside your company. So one, you want to talk to your manager once again for that professional courtesy. Another reason that in this concept of applying for a role internally at your company that you should talk with your manager is they can also help you grow into the role that you desire next, even if that job opportunity is not currently available. And a lot of job opportunities are not shared internally. A lot of promotions happen behind closed doors. A lot of promotions happen when leaders at a company identify that there's a need on this team over here, and they're already thinking about who can do that job. The more you engage your manager in this process and the more you have an open dialogue with them about your career growth and how they can help you get there, the more they will be at those tables, or their managers will be at those tables, and they can recommend you for these types of roles. So I really wanted to hit that really hard. I would leverage that relationship as much as possible. And once again, looking externally, you're going to want to approach your job application or your job search like it's a numbers game. I love teaching job search strategy. I love working with people to find new jobs in my career coaching business. And one thing I tell people all the time is to apply for jobs like it's a numbers game, because truly, as a recruiter, we only have so much bandwidth to look at applications, and the more you can apply, the more chances you have out there. And of course, utilize your network. And the best possible practice for that is talk to people that you already know. And whether they're personal connections or professional connections, and say, hey, I'm looking for a new role. This is kind of what it looks like. I want to be a leader. I want it to look like this. And do you know anywhere where they're hiring, or do you know anyone hiring for that kind of position? And branding yourself like a leader. This is something I love to talk about because, like I mentioned, I read resumes all the time. I'm always looking through LinkedIn profiles, and branding yourself as a candidate is really referring to the whole concept of how to put together a great resume, of how to talk about yourself in interviews, and how to put together that LinkedIn, how to write a cover letter. Anything in the scope of how you present yourself as a job candidate is what we mean by branding yourself like a leader. And there's a difference between branding yourself like a leader and then just in general talking about yourself as a strong professional. And if you're new to leadership, I wanted to provide some tips on how you can begin this process. If you have never led a team before, or you're new to leadership and you want to gain some new experience, I would start with looking internally at where you can start working on committees, maybe volunteering externally, and seek out opportunities to lead new projects. Then take that and put it on your resume. Talk about how you've led projects of any scale in any context, and being able to demonstrate that you've already been a leader in some space is a great way to go. Externally, this looks, or if you're a leader with experience already on the books, this looks so similar. You're actually going to do the same thing of making sure that your candidate materials are speaking to your leadership and telling this story from a candidate brand perspective. And that all sounds nice. Like, oh, of course, brand yourself like a leader, but what does that mean? What does it actually look like? I mean, can we see an example? And the answer to that is yes, because I'm going to show you a fictional person. This is not a client. All clients have confidentiality. This is a fictional operations manager and their fictional resume. And this is their experience where they're talking through what they've done in their past roles. And all of this is accurate, right? This person has managed a team of 10 employees. They led daily meetings. It's clear they were a leader, but they could still tell a story about their leadership that's even more effective. So I would love for you to just like take a moment and think through in your mind, like what would you do in order to showcase leadership a little bit more? Just kind of think through like how would you take these bullet points, add in more context, and in about 5 seconds, I'm going to show you how this fictional person rewrote their bullet points for their resume. As you're thinking through this for that approximate 5 seconds, I'd love to say that starting with a resume is a great place in your candidate branding because as you gain confidence in your resume and in your bullet points, then you can really move forward and tell a great story in interviews and move the rest of your candidate brand. So now that you've considered, here's what this person wrote. And so I'd love for you to think about what is standing out to you in this. And what do you see that showcases them as more of a leader? This is the exact same experience. They are doing the same thing, managing 10 employees. And how does this work when they are moving into the next phase of their resume? And I'm going to tell you a few things that stand out to me. It's longer, there are more details, more information specifies a level of thoughtfulness that's critical for leadership. There are more numbers, there are results, there are leadership action verbs. They're showcasing how they make decisions. And I'm telling you, as a recruiter, the most important thing on a resume are your bullet points and the way that you talk about your claims and being able to show that you're already thinking in this really thoughtful way on your resume is really going to catch the attention for leadership roles. This is another freebie you'll get. And there's also an example in the resource that you can get at the end of our hour today that shows how someone who hasn't had leadership experience before, how they can brand that experience for a brand new leadership role where maybe they've never led a team, but they want to showcase that they think like a leader. So wanted to let you know that. And finally, a couple notes on how you would prepare for an interview. So you've gone through the process, you asked for the promotion, you applied for the leadership role, and you got the interview. And you're going to do all the same typical interview practices. You're going to want to research the company, practice your answers, look presentable, ask questions through the interview, send a follow-up email. All basic stuff, wanted to cover those notes. And then we have preparing for the interview, articulating a vision of your strengths as a leader, aka your elevator pitch. What that means is when you go into that interview and they say, "Tell me about yourself. Why are you interested in working at this company? Why are you interested in this role?" Come up with a great elevator pitch that showcases where your strengths are as a leader, and that's going to really connect through the interview process. And finally, understand the context, understand the people, understand the reporting structure. If you're looking at a middle management role, you're going to want to understand who you're reporting up to and who is on your team in your org chart. That is incredibly important for a leadership position because that's the entire scope of your role is who you're working with. And finally, this is applicable to all interviews, but I'm telling you, as a recruiter, I've interviewed a lot of leaders. One of the things that makes leaders that I want to hire and leaders that don't make it into further interviews, what makes those people stand out in the first bucket is being able to talk a lot about what they can offer the company. And they're already envisioning themselves in this leadership position, and they're able to talk really clearly about how they move the needle forward at the company I'm hiring for. So those are some notes on interviews. Now we're going to move into, you've thought about the logistics of how to apply for, you've applied for the role, you've interviewed for the role, and now you're in that role. So with that, if you have any questions about the logistics up to this point in the chat, please drop this in the chat. We'll answer them at the end, and I'm going to pass it to Brittany to talk through now you're a leader. So let's go.
Yes, thank you, Nicole. That was super helpful. And I love the detail. And we even had some comments in the chat as well, how helpful and transparent it is to see that comparison of the bullet points. So I'm sure everyone's going to love your free download with another comparison before and after. And yeah, so much good information we have today. And next, yeah, let's transition into the idea of, okay, now you're in a management position or a leadership role. And before we dive into the details, I want to make sure we're on the same page. So in the chat, I'd love for you to share what your thoughts are, the differences between leader, manager, or leadership management, because I know Nicole and I use these interchangeably a bit, and there is a bit of a difference I want to highlight before we go into my half of the presentation. So if anyone has thoughts, please drop it in the chat, and then I will share on my end too what I see. All right, we have a manager does the things right, a leader does the right things. Ooh, I have learned once. Leading people, managing tasks. Ooh, that's good too. Oh, I think Sheila got cut off. We'll wait for the second half of that. These are great. Manager doesn't necessarily make a good leader. Love it. Thank you. Yes, honestly. Oh, one more. I feel like the term manager feels more transactional. Leadership feels more visionary. Leaders foster growth of the team. Okay, I swear you guys are just reading my notes at this point. So this is exactly the point I wanted to make, is that leadership and leaders focus more on the vision and the people. So they're bringing people together to achieve a common vision, and it is more proactive. It's more about other people, and you can be a leader and not a manager, right? And I think Nicole mentioned this a few times too. You could be a leader as a mentor. You could be a leader, on a sports team, or maybe a leader in a situation with friends or family navigating a difficult situation. Honestly, you could be a leader in that way. And then managers are more about, managing the steps, tasks, and processes to achieve a goal. And usually when we use the term management, or when I use the term management, it is, you have a direct report, and you're managing those people as well. So again, you can be a leader and not a manager, but you can also be a manager and not a leader, because there's that difference of sometimes the managers get stuck in the weeds. They're focused a bit more on the tasks, and they're not looking at that bigger vision. So all these tips and tricks we're going to go through today are more about that bigger vision and things that will help you stand out as a leader, whether or not you're a manager. Sound good? Yes. All right, let's go forward. So the first thing when you're in your first 90 days as a leader, manager, or honestly, if you're already in some sort of leadership position and you aren't doing any of these things, I highly recommend you get started today. And setting clear expectations is a great place to start, because honestly, this is where I see, when it comes to my clients in leadership, about maybe 80% of their issues along the way come back to clear expectations. Either there weren't clear expectations to begin with, or we aren't talking about these expectations. Someone has an expectation over here, the other person doesn't know that, and we're operating on different lanes. So we want to make sure from the get-go, or wherever you're at currently, you're having these clear expectations. And where we're going to go with that first is setting expectations for yourself. And first off here, one piece that people tend to forget and overlook is filling your own cup first. And most leaders have to learn this the hard way by getting burnt out and completely overwhelmed and having a negative cup in order to learn this lesson. So I hope I can at least save one of you that learning experience. But in order to be filling other people's cups, and that, I'm assuming most people have heard this expression, but essentially it's all about your energy and having energy for yourself and being able to then invest in other people as well. But you can't pour from an empty cup, right? If your energy levels are completely depleted, if you're burnt out, you're overwhelmed, you have zero energy left to give, how can you then help other people or work towards that vision with other people? So some things to help fill your own cup first as a leader: thinking about your health and well-being. What are those activities you need to do, maybe even first thing in the morning before you get started at work, to fill up your cup? Maybe it's working out, meditating, going outside for a walk, little things like that. Honestly, even 5 minutes can make a huge difference in your day. Want to think about even your boundaries of your day too. Make sure you're not giving too much, right? You don't want to, again, fill or empty your cup too much. You don't ever want to be empty, is the whole point we're trying to get here. And even thinking about maybe focus time on your calendar, when you need to be working versus when you need to be in meetings, and blocking time and intentionally ahead of time so that you have that time for yourself to get projects done. Next is understanding the expectations of your own manager. So obviously in any role you want to be doing this, but at the beginning, or again, if you haven't done this already, you want to get very clear with your manager. What are your specific roles and responsibilities? What are those KPIs or metrics? How will you be measured for success in your role? And how often will we be checking in on that? The worst thing that could happen is you get to the end of your review and there's some sort of big surprise. Your manager hasn't seen your work throughout the year, they don't know what you're working on, or you're working on something way over here, they thought you should be over here, and you're getting a negative review. We want to prevent that as much as possible. And then next is scheduling meetings with yourself to create professional habits. And I'll add a little extra piece to this is keeping those meetings with yourself too. That can be the harder part here. But this is all about being more proactive and strategic with what you're working on and how you're spending your time and your energy, like we talked about earlier. So it could be some things that work really well with my clients are an end of day wrap up routine, even if it's just 15 minutes at the end of each workday to reflect on what they did that day, what they accomplished, what's working, what's not working, and then prepping for tomorrow and looking at your calendar. Hey, are any of these meetings, do I need dedicated time to prepare for that meeting? Do I need time to drive to this meeting and I haven't blocked off that time? Thinking about all the little details like that can really help you stand out and again, help you keep your cup filled so that you can show up as your best self, as your best leader when you get to these meetings and you're not rushing around as much, you're fully prepared and you're showing up in the best light. All right, and then on the other side of expectations is setting these expectations with your team. So this looks like potentially creating a working agreement. This is maybe a newer term for some people, but what this looks like, it can be as formal or informal as you would like. And this is more specifically for people in management positions where you have people working under you. But you want to get to know each person individually, but then also as a team, have these agreements when it comes to communication preferences for individuals. This is so, so helpful and can help them be more efficient, you be more efficient, and again, being on the same page. So do these people prefer to communicate over Slack, email, phone call, texting? And what is it for different scenarios? If it's something urgent, yeah, definitely call me. But hey, if you want me to get something done in a week, just send it an email so I have it there and I can flag it and put it on my calendar as needed. So having those conversations with people that you work with in advance is huge. And honestly, it's something most people don't do or don't take the time to do or aren't intentional with it. And even thinking about different people's learning styles. So if you're a manager and you have to train people, asking them how they learn best. Is it, hey, do you want me to do it and you want to shadow me and watch me do it? Do you want to get started with it and ask questions along the way? Do you want a written standard procedure? Do you want a video walking me through it? There's all these different ways now that we can train people, and having different ways for each person is super, super helpful. And then even thinking about acknowledging the people on your team and how they prefer that. Some people would absolutely hate being called out in a large meeting, even if you're saying something wonderful about them and what a great job they do. Where other people, yeah, maybe they're more behind the scenes. They just want an email from you or they want you to call them out in your one-on-one meeting and acknowledge them that way. So thinking about every individual person's needs. And I know I've shared this with one of my clients before, and they were like, oh my gosh, this is so much to remember. How do you do this? The first thing you do is simply write it down. You don't have to memorize all of this, but have like a cheat sheet in your iPhone, in your notes, something you can refer back to. So when something does come up, you already know these people's preferences. And again, it's just about working more efficiently together so you're all on the same page and can get to where you're going a lot quicker. Okay. Being intentional with our meeting cadences is another big hiccup I see with people, managers, leaders, everyone on the team. So what I would recommend here, if you have recurring meetings like every week, every other week, be intentional and think through them one by one and think about how long they actually last. Think about the topics you're covering, thinking about, do you get off track, all of this. And just because a meeting has always been 60 minutes every week doesn't mean it needs to be 60 minutes every week. I know, wild. I know. We get so hung up in these ideas of how things have to go. But if you stop and think about, wait, we actually don't need 60 minutes, or we spend half the time talking about our weekends and maybe we don't need that. Maybe, we could do a 45-minute meeting. So we still get some time to catch up about our weekends, but we're not wasting an extra 15 minutes. Thinking through these a little bit more strategically and not just leaving things on the calendar because that's how they've always been. We want to be intentional because another hang up I see with a lot of people moving into management is that their calendar gets taken over by meetings. And then they have no time left to do the work that they need to do, all the administrative stuff on the back end. So you want to protect your time as much as you can and know that most of the time you may not need to be in some of these meetings. So asking yourself that and the other people invited to the meetings, do they need to be here? Is there a purpose for them here? Or are we just inviting everyone because we think we should be, right? Okay, next. Just like you did with your own manager, you want to set clear performance expectations with anyone reporting to you and have that being a really clear expectation up in the upfront when you first hire them or when you're first starting, being really clear again with those KPIs, metrics, what they're being measured against, what are their daily, weekly, monthly responsibilities, and then how often you're checking in on that to make sure you're on the same page throughout the year so there's no surprises for you or them when it comes to year-end reviews. And lastly, you want to also be open, of course, to expectations from your team members. All of this is a two-way street when it comes to working on a team, and your teammates and people on your team may have expectations of you, and you're not just going to be coming in saying, here's how it's going to go, here's how our team's going to work, and you need to sign your life away to me because this is how I work. We want it to be a two-way street and make sure everything's as efficient and helpful, productive. And again, someone mentioned earlier, we're all humans. And I think we forget sometimes that we're not robots and we don't all think the same way. We don't all work the same way. And we need to give ourselves grace. So we want to be open with each other as well. Okay, so after your first 90 days, or again, if you're already in some sort of leadership position and you want to grow your confidence, a huge area and way you can do this is through specific leadership skills that I see over and over again will help people stand out because they are the most impactful for both the individual, the people on your team, the company, but people often forget these or they're never trained on this. So people don't really know how to do this. And the first one we're going to talk about is prioritization. And what I mean by that is focusing on what's urgent and important. So many times we think something's urgent or we think it's important and we give it more attention and priority than it needs. So urgent means it's a pressing deadline that needs to be done. And important means that it's critical to whatever project or goal that you're working on. Where a great example here is when people get email notifications all throughout the day, they want to jump to it and respond immediately thinking it's urgent. But probably if you ask yourself, I would say 80 to 90% are not urgent at all, maybe more. So stopping yourself and thinking, okay, what is actually urgent? What's important? Where do I need to be focusing my attention? And thinking about that for your team as well. So to do that, you need to be doing this every single day, prioritizing daily, and every time a new project or ask happens. And with that, you need to be, if it's coming from someone else, you need to have really clear expectations for those deadlines. This is another hang up I see all the time with people is that they're getting an email from someone, hey, can you do this real quick? Hey, can you do this as soon as possible? What does that really mean? How am I supposed to prioritize that with the 20 other things on my to-do list just for today, right? Do you actually need it today? Or are you behind on your deadline and now I need to rush to it, right? Just being a little bit more specific of, hey, I need this by this date, this time, whatever it is. But then you as the manager, you need to be prioritizing with the people on your team and doing the same for them of, hey, here's the deadline for this project. And again, maybe checking in on their other deadlines, checking in on other milestones, how often we want to check in along the way as well. And always keep in mind, you want to experiment with how to keep up on all of these deadlines, especially as a manager. You have your own projects and administrative deadlines, probably. You have people on your team with all these different deadlines, all these different checkpoints. And that's probably a lot to keep up on, right? It's enough for just yourself, and let alone maybe you have 5 to 15 people underneath you with all of these other deadlines. So I always recommend experimenting with how to keep up on this. I honestly do not have a one size fits all app or software that I recommend to everyone because, again, we're humans. We all think differently. We all work differently. You do need to find what works best for you. And honestly, some people still swear by their notepad with a to-do list, their planner, their Google Calendar, or their fancy software. Like, you really do need to experiment with what works for you and with the people on your team as well, so that you're, again, communicating these deadlines together, you're on the same page. But you do need to keep track of them somewhere. If nothing else, write them all down. If you're starting from scratch, write them down. Okay, the other big leadership skill that will help you stand out, because most people honestly are scared of this or don't know how to do it properly, is delegation, especially for new managers. And by this, I mean the who does what by when. So first you need to know when to be delegating. And again, if you're a new manager, you likely, or a manager at all, likely the answer is yes, you need to be delegating. But again, thinking about if you are a team leader on a new project, you're going to be, kind of delegating those tasks throughout the project. So always keeping it top of mind and being intentional when you need to be doing it and not avoiding it if you can help it. I know sometimes it feels scary. People are intimidated by it because it can feel like, oh, I'm just offloading the work I don't want to do, or I'm just, giving people work, or I'm micromanaging. But when you do it intentionally, it's not micromanaging, first of all. It's intentional, it's helpful, and you can do it in a way to empower the people that they want to be then doing the tasks. Next bullet, please. So ways to do this most effectively. I've probably said the word expectations 1,000 times by now, but I'm going to say it again. You need to set clear expectations when you're delegating, specifically for the end result. And this is the way that we don't micromanage, is that you're not setting expectations for every single step along the way or every detail along the way. That gets into the micromanaging area. But setting a clear expectation for an end result of the project, task, is a way to delegate intentionally and a way to empower the person to then experiment again in their own way to find the path that works best for them to get to an end result. But again, you want to be clear with the deadline. You want to be clear with as specific as you can. Of, say it's a report. I want a 5 to 10 page report in PowerPoint that summarizes our Q3 earnings for our team with sales broken down by week, something like that, right? That's very specific. They know where they're headed, but you're not saying, okay, you need to start in Excel and you need to do this and you do this. If they ask you for that help, sure, you can help them through the way or along the way, but you want to start with that end result and help them, guide them through the process without telling them exactly how to do it. And another way to do that is having guardrails and checkpoints along the ways. So again, the guardrails can be, okay, do you know where you're going to be pulling the data from? Do you have access to everything? Do you know where you're getting the information? And then the checkpoints are, hey, we need this in 2 weeks. Let's check in 1 week to see how you're doing, see if you have any questions to help you move forward quicker. And then lastly, be specific with them when they should come to you otherwise, because you want to avoid either someone that's going to come to you every 10 minutes to ask for every little step, and you want to help empower them again to feel confident to move forward, even if they're maybe not sure they can move forward a bit, but knowing when they're feeling stuck and they should come to you, like, hey, if you can't move forward, come to me. Or hey, if you're really hung up on something, give me a call, schedule 15 minutes on my calendar, whatever it looks like for you. And being specific with them will help. Honestly, just offering that support helps boost their confidence. Be like, okay, I know I can stumble around a little bit and figure it out, but if I get stuck, I don't have to wait for a checkpoint in a week. I can just fill in the blank there. All right, now we're going to talk about communication, which is another huge leadership skill that I see people getting stuck in. And honestly, it makes a huge impact and isn't often taught many places. So I'm going to give you all of my favorite tips and tricks, and there's going to be a lot here. So I'm keeping up the pace here to give you as much as I can, and know that these next few slides are going to be in our free resource. So stay tuned for more, and you don't have to feverishly write all of this down, but you can if you want. First off, for communicating with confidence as a leader is shifting away from disempowering language. And a great example first is the I think versus I know or I will confirm. Just using that language of I think in certain situations can kind of belittles you sometimes or makes you sound less confident than you are. And I know sometimes it's just a bad habit for people that they start sentences with I think. So just try to be mindful of when you're doing that. And is it really something that it's an opinion, or is it something that you know and you're stating a fact? So that can create so much confidence for yourself and for the people that you're speaking to start those sentences with I know this. Or if you're answering a question and you don't know, say, oh, I'll confirm that, but I think it's this. If you want to, that could work better. But versus and, this I hear and see all of the time. And if you haven't heard this yet, this was a game changer when I first learned this a few years ago. When you use the word but in the middle of a sentence, you are essentially negating the first half of that sentence. And we do this all the time. So if you're giving someone feedback and you say, you did a great job in today's presentation, but next time you should do this. They're not going to remember that you said they did a great job. They're going to remember you said, but next time do this. And that's going to stick with them. You know, it's the negative piece of it. They're going to say, oh, it's still not good enough. Oh, I thought it was so great. Man, I can't win with you, or whatever the situation is. So we want to switch that language to and, because both things can be true. Or honestly, when it comes to feedback, using them maybe in separate situations can be helpful. If it's in the moment, especially a presentation, say, wow, that was so great. And we can talk about feedback later on our one-on-one, something like that. I'm sorry versus thank you. Again, I see this all the time. Another just bad habit that, especially for female leaders, and saying I'm sorry for too many things happens a lot. And it is almost a way of belittling ourselves and putting ourselves kind of beneath other people in the situation. So just switching anytime you want to say I'm sorry to thank you. It's a good challenge to do in your mind too. Instead of I'm sorry for being late, it's a thank you for your patience, or I'm sorry for the late reply on my email. Thank you for your patience with my response. A little shift like that makes you sound way more confident, much more like a leader, and it's not, it's not being apologetic or belittling yourself. Next is the I'll try versus I'll do. I'll try is basically just a half-ass promise. So we want to shift to giving real promises of knowing what you can do, promising that, and then the rest is not something you're promising, right? And you can check in on the rest later. And this is just a personal pet peeve of mine, is when people start sentences with, I don't know if you know this or not, but, and then they explain the whole thing, and it's like a 5-minute interlogue. Instead, why don't you just say, do you know this? Okay, if not, then I'll explain it. Or if yes, then I don't need to explain it for 5 minutes. And another communication traps we want to avoid, and these are explained more in the guide, so I won't go into too much detail. But first is the assumptions. I have to remind my clients of this all the time, is that we cannot read other people's minds. As much as we wish we could, we really can't do it. So we need to stop trying. So don't make decisions based on assumptions. You need to just ask the person. Next is excuses, sort of like what we said earlier about the I'm sorry, this is late. I was just so busy doing X, Y, Z. Most of the time, people don't need to know why something didn't happen. Instead, you need to come forward with a solution-oriented mindset of saying, oh, thank you for your patience with me getting you this report. I had too much on my plate this week, and next time I'm going to delegate this to someone on my team. Solution. And judgments and gossip. Honestly, this is just another bad personal habit a lot of us have. And my rule of thumb is to not say anything about someone you wouldn't want them to hear. And the same goes for putting it in writing. So just when it comes to workplace stuff, avoid judgments, avoid gossip. If you get sucked into a conversation, just leave the situation. And these little things are actually pretty big, but they will help you stand out as a leader by not getting sucked into drama, workplace, bad habits. Okay, last up, I'm going to blow through these pretty quickly because again, it's in our guide, but a few habits to help you communicate confidently as a leader. So providing context that's specific to your audience. So being aware of who's going to be in the room, who's going to be in the meeting with you, and hopefully knowing what they already know, or again, asking upfront what they already know so that you can provide the facts as needed and not explain too much that's unnecessary, or you're providing very intentional things for that group. And you want to stick to facts as much as possible. Again, this goes back to maybe the previous slide of avoiding judgments, assumptions. You want to stick to facts, and that will help you also communicate more directly and succinctly, which will help you stand out as a leader. And then do not justify or over-explain. I see this a lot, especially in females or just people who are not confident in what they're sharing or talking about. It can be really helpful to think about these last two as well. A way to do it effectively is thinking about your speaking in bullets, and they're in facts. So facts of 3, you say, these are my 3 facts, period. And you can cut yourself off. And that way you're not over explaining, you're not talking in circles, and you're getting your point across a lot more clearly. And if nothing else from all of this that I just shared, my number one takeaway for anyone in leadership, or honestly not, is to end emails and meetings with a summary of who does what by when. Even just remembering that in your head, who does what by when, will help you stand out. It will help your team work more effectively together. It just helps keep everyone on the same page, sets those clear expectations, and will honestly get more done a lot quicker instead of going back and forth later. If, wait, when did I need to send you that? Wait, who's doing which of these projects? This one bullet is a game changer. So ending on the high note, my favorite tip, and I know that's a lot, and I'm going to take a deep breath, but please drop your questions in the chat if you had any questions on this part, or Nicole's section earlier, because we saved here about 7 minutes at least for questions. And as we're wrapping up, yeah, feel free to drop them in.
Perfect. We have one question that came to me through a DM. So I will answer this. The question is, I'd love to hear our perspective on how to handle a situation where there's a disconnect between a recruiting team and a hiring team. How can a candidate contribute positively to moving their resume forward? So I can definitely answer this as someone who is a recruiter. I, it's hard for me to answer this in I think the exact context in which you might be asking, because a recruiting team and a hiring manager should be working together in tandem, and that recruiter, their client is the hiring manager. So if the hiring manager says, I want to hire this person, I don't want to hire that person, it's the recruiter's job to facilitate all those actions and be consultative. So I'm not sure how a candidate could do that unless there's a more specific scenario that you want to talk through, but would be happy to talk through that a little bit more. And thanks for the comments in the chat.
Yes.
Thank you so
Thank you for
much.
answering that. I appreciate it, or at least addressing it.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And yeah, let me know if there's something more specific, because recruiting always takes a life of its own.
Well, I'm currently experiencing it as a candidate, but I've also experienced the disconnect on the hiring side of sometimes the best candidates don't get through. And so is there anything that candidates can do better to more ensure that they are getting through? I guess for this audience, what can the candidate do?
Right. So there's a lot of advice out there on tailor your resume for every job. And I understand the intention in that, but I think that you burn a lot of energy when you do that as a candidate applying for jobs. What I always recommend to my clients that I work with in career coaching is to create a different kind of resume for each kind of job they're applying for, and not edit it every single time, so that if you are that operations manager, but you're also applying to project management and tech, but you're also applying to, I don't know, like nonprofit leadership, have 2 different resumes that speak to those skill sets a little bit distinctly, and like preference all of that. There's not like a perfect wand there, but a recruiter should ideally be able to pick out those connections between a resume and a role.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, should we go to the next slide while people are
Yes.
maybe dropping in some more questions or thoughts?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You go for it.
Okay, awesome. We'd love for you to continue your learning with us, and we have a QR code here. This is our free guide. Please download it. This is also what you will do is you'll complete a feedback survey. We would love your feedback. Thank you so much for the comments in the chat. I'm so glad that y'all got to pick up some good tips. Complete the feedback survey here, and then you'll receive your free resource guide. I'll tell you a little bit about how you can work with me. I offer career coaching, I do speaking and workshop, and I do freelance recruiting. So if you do have any hiring needs, I can work in a consultative or or being your recruiter, like whatever you want. Recruiting, I love talent, all sides of the board. Follow me at Career Coach Nicole. Brittany, I will let you tell people how they can work with you.
Yeah, so I do one-on-one leadership and executive coaching for you to kind of deep dive into all this stuff is just like, the tip of the iceberg that we can cover. And it's more custom, basically custom leadership training when we do this one-on-one coaching. So you bring your goals, you bring your topics, and we'll dive deep into them together. But also I can do group trainings and workshops where we dive into these topics together in a group setting in your organization. And I would, recommend following me on LinkedIn at Brittany Canaski. And I'm constantly sharing, cool tips, tricks, blog posts, articles I'm finding interesting, and all the goodies like that. And too, when you fill out the survey, you also, you'll get receive our free resource guide. And I forgot to mention too, everyone that signed up will also be added to both of our newsletter lists too. So you'll get all of our resources that way and can keep in touch with us that way as well.
Awesome. Thank y'all so much for attending. If anyone has any last minute questions, we are here. But appreciate y'all for joining and can't wait to stay connected with you and happy leadership. Reach out to us, even if it's like, in a few months, you're like, whoa, I got that leadership role. How do I strengthen my leadership? Call Brittany. If you're in 6 months, like, all right, it's time, call me. I'll help you get that job, whatever y'all want. We are here for you forever and ever.
Yes. Yeah, even just sending me a LinkedIn message, I'm always checking those, or shooting me an email. We have our contact information on our resource guide as well. Any last minute questions? Nothing yet. Yeah, thank you all for coming and for learning and investing in you today.